Welcome to Business Line's State of the Economy podcast, where you'll find insight, analysis, and the story behind the numbers.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of Business Line's State of the Economy podcast. Today, we have with us Ankit Mittal, who is the CEO and co-founder of Sheru, which is India's first vehicle-to-grid startup, which is a technology that transfers power back from an electric vehicle to the power grid. Now, V2G enables an electric vehicle to provide the same services that a battery does, such as energy storage, power backup, grid balancing, etc. Now, Ankit founded Sheru in 2019 with the objective of building a platform that helps energy and mobility sectors decarbonize sustainably. Now, he is a subject matter specialist on electric mobility, storage, and industrial systems. Ankit is building Sheru into a virtual energy storage platform for the renewables and EV sectors. A graduate from BITS Pilani, he oversaw Sheru's innovation of integrating V2G with battery swapping. And he is also a member secretary of CPOS, a body working on driving the EV charging infrastructure in India. Now, Sheru's patented battery vending machine allows for a bidirectional flow of energy, both from the grid to the battery and back. And this innovation is a global first and brings together a large capacity of idle batteries in the battery swapping ecosystem that can then be used to provide energy storage solutions. The work done by Sheru assumes importance now as the Power Ministry is also targeting to create a mechanism where EVs can be used for bidirectional vehicle-to-grid technologies to not just help charging the vehicles, but also for grid balancing with variable renewable energy sources. And this is very important for the Indian power ecosystem because as India enhances its RE capacity, grid balancing will become very important to avoid blackouts. And at present, battery storage is the best solution for this. Now, Ankit will help us to understand how crucial V2G can be or is in India's efforts to balance the grid and charge EVs sustainably. So without wasting much time, welcome Ankit to our platform. Glad to have you here. We want our listeners to have a breakup of this. So what is the V2G technology and what are its advantages and disadvantages?
Thank you, Rishi. Thank you for having me here. So when we think about V2G, first of all, the full form is vehicle to grid. It simply means that having the capability of sending power from a vehicle back onto the grid, which has become a possibility after EVs. Earlier, when we think about ICE vehicles, this was not a possibility to reverse flow the fuel that was there in the vehicles for the use of, let's say, peaking. But with EVs, it's very much possible to really integrate electric vehicles that are coming in and make them a part of the entire energy system of the country, which runs on the electrical grid. So fundamentally, it is a combination of three kinds of technologies. One, it is at a hardware level, an application of inverter tech, wherein it allows the vehicle to convert the energy stored in it in a DC format in batteries, convert it back into AC format so that it can go back to the grid. Second, there is a software layer on top of the hardware, which allows the vehicle to coordinate its charging and discharging time with the grid. And third, there are market mechanisms which are again require some kind of technology to really pass on the benefit for a vehicle owner to participate in grid balancing for their state or for their city or for their country, whichever is that whoever is asking for it. So it's a combination of three things on which basically this new element of vehicle to grid comes in EVs and then benefits the entire energy system. So I think coming to the second part of the question, when we talk about what are the advantages and disadvantages of it, I think it's a very new element that is being added into the EV landscape. It is a very new element that is being added into the energy system for both energy as well as mobility. It's a new element or a new sort of handshake that is happening. So it is very difficult, first of all, to size up the complete outcome in one go. But when we look at energy transition in the country, we see that energy transition in India is a very massive investment affair. It requires a lot of investment to go into renewables. It requires a lot of investment to go into electric vehicles, battery energy storage systems, various kind of hardware systems. So vehicle to grid fundamentally allows the capex that is going into electric vehicles already to be reutilized for the purpose of grid balancing, so that additional capex for uh, grid infrastructure to be able to adopt renewables and not only adopt but also allow them to grow, that capex gets basically subsidized or circumvented by utilizing the already capex that is happening in the electric vehicles via this new element. So I think at a very base level, at a very fundamental level, it expedites electrification. V2G has the potential of expediting electrification on both ends, whether it is power production or whether it is electrification of transport, whether it is electrification of heating and cooling systems, everything. Uh, so I think, yeah, that's the biggest advantage of it. Uh, Coming to the disadvantage of it, I think we are at a very early stage right now to really map out the cost implications
Mhm.
of vehicle to grid, or for on an EV, or on the grid, or any kind of upgrades that have to be done to be able to adopt this technology at scale, both it on OEM side as well as grid side. Uh, but the base level requirements for this technology to work, that is how much impact it does on the battery life, those things have been globally tried out in various formats. For example, in India, we tried out vehicle to grid tech with battery swapping first, but in
Mhm.
West it was tried out first with electric buses, electric fleets, etc. So some of the early trials have shown that the degradation is marginal and the outcome is outsized. And that is why we feel that this is an element that needs to be thoroughly examined, thoroughly developed upon, and the focus needs to be on making it work rather than why it can't work.
No, no, very, very well articulated, Ankit. I think since you are in the thick of V2G, you'd be aware that India's Achilles heel right now is its transmission.
Correct.
Uh, Now, the first this tender war battery storage came, the prices, total prices with power clubbed, RE power clubbed is somewhere around 12.5 rupees per unit
Yeah.
to 13.10 rupees per unit.
Yeah.
Uh, if we if this V2G technology, I know it's in early stages, but it holds a lot of promise, as in the power ministry is speaking about it. uh, if this develops further, do you think we'll be able to bring down this cost quantum from 12.5 to further down? And I know I'm asking you a question which is a sort of answer would a conclusive answer wouldn't be possible, but what time frame should we look at it? Would it take 2 to 3 years for this technology to standard stabilize and proliferate?
I think, Rishi, it is I think, answering the first thing, I think we certainly feel that uh, flexible renewable power
Yeah.
is something that is not only to be solved or developed on site. I think when we think about flexible green power, we first of all think about it in two parts.
Okay.
Power production can be happening anywhere. Power production can be happening via renewable, by solar plants, by wind plants, by waste plants. There are many ways of generating power, and going forward, we are discovering more and more renewable sources. The
Mhm.
focus is in the right direction. The beauty with renewables is that power production cost also goes down.
Yeah.
So power production cost is always set to go down with more innovation, with more sustainable technologies. Uh, Once the more sustainable technologies are adopted. So I think, first of all, in principle, power production is set to keep on becoming more cost efficient. When we
Mhm.
think about transmission, the problem is that we think about it in silo. We
Okay.
we we say we generally, the entire storage requirement is only thought of in terms of dispatchable RE plants,
Mhm.
that governments, various tenders that come out via state governments or by the federal government, they basically focus more on flexible or dispatchable renewable plants, wherein the capability to store and dispatch energy as and when needed is already present at the plant. So that is something that we believe can, first of all, has to be thought in two parts. So we look at the metric of levelized cost of storage.
Okay.
See that fundamentally the grid, not only in India, but globally everywhere, due to the focus on energy transition, which is also coming in through the climate goals only itself. I mean, 50 to 60% emissions come from energy sector globally everywhere. So energy transition is at the core of it. And there, everywhere, the understanding is that we are shifting towards renewables. So very fundamentally, we are at a trend where the capability to generate electricity in a green manner is already there. It will proliferate. The capability to adopt digital technologies is already there. It will become more cost efficient, and the capability to develop or manufacture a lot of infrastructure within the country is also focus area for a lot of countries today. So fundamentally, we have all the things in place. What is missing is the ability to store energy.
Okay.
That is why the most important metric is the levelized cost of storage. So all these dispatchable plant tenders that come in, they typically have a cost of around 8 to 9 rupees, and that too after a viability gap funding, baked as a levelized cost of storage into the total 13 rupees that you spoke about.
Okay.
We believe that with the value stacking of vehicle to grid on top of EVs, with the value stacking of being able to use stationary batteries that are replacing diesel generators for grid purpose also. This is basically value stacking. We are reutilizing the same asset for more applications. With that, the levelized cost of storage for the grid can be brought down significantly. It can be brought down in our initial assessments as much as by 30%. And so in summary, like if I try to answer your question, my sense would be that around 30% cost reduction can be expected out of the 80% cost structure of that 13 rupees. The rest will also reduce by around 15 to 20% due to innovations and scale up of renewable energy. So all in all, we can look at a 25% cost reduction with this element coming in.
That's quite a sizable economic incentive to begin with. Now, Ankit, you've already given us a briefer on how V2G can aid in the clean energy transition.
Yeah.
If I would take a deep dive with you, what are the key characteristics with V2G which really, can accelerate the transition? We are already at a heightened pace of transition, but I think there are several gaps, or should I say, I think gaps would be the better word, which right now hinders that pace. So what V2G can on a larger scale do? What that with the to speed up the pace of transition?
I think at a national level, we need to outlay a clear incentive structure for such technologies to be adopted. More than that, a clear administrative framework needs to be communicated to grid operators and all the stakeholders of energy system to evaluate this technology if any vendor comes in with a solution, so that it doesn't look like a completely new subject that they will have to evaluate from scratch every time a new solution comes in. If I simplify it, fundamentally today, let's say we go with a solution around V2G to any grid operator, it's a evaluation from scratch, wherein their requirement has to be from scratch understood. Then the revenue, what incentive they can pay us for providing this service has to be calculated. And then there's an entire process ahead of it. But this entire process can be squeezed down by having a brace administrative framework communicated that, for example, the step that CEA took is certainly a great one that brings in V2G in a light where there can be a fundamental trust on this new technology from grid operators' point of view to plan their future upgrades or plan their future capacity. So I think more such steps need to be taken so that, first of all, the initial evaluation phase can be reduced. And second, a clear incentive structure, a clear revenue structure, at least the calculator which the operators and other stakeholders can use to arrive at that incentive that they should be paying, that needs to come out more strongly. I think these are the two things which will expedite execution in the most core manner. There are, of course, other things that can expedite the execution and adoption of this tech, but those are more spread out across the entire ecosystem. Because, see, when you think about V2G, there is an involvement of an OEM also. There's an involvement of the end customer who's owning that asset. There's the involvement of the financing company that might have provide a financial product around ownership of that asset. There might be some other intermediary in between. For example, in case of electric cars, there might be a charging infrastructure ecosystem that also might have to be integrated to access their capacity. So there are different parts to this technology being adopted and its outcome being realized by the country, not only in India, but outside also. And those things are something that as a business is a focus area for us to work upon. We actively engage with the ecosystem. We actively work on each of the execution elements, supply side elements. But the more demand side becomes clear, the more those incentive structures and the administrative frameworks and the initial evaluation frameworks, they get clear from the senior stakeholders in the energy system. That will, of course, boost the entire adoption in a very big way.
Okay. So, based on the last part of your conversation where you've spoken about the involvement of so many stakeholders for a single platform. Now, Sheru, with respect to V2G, you have a couple of firsts to your kitty. I can understand when you would have begun with conceptualizing this process, it wouldn't have been easy to scale it up. So, that the larger public also starts a discourse on this. So how has your experience been, of stacking up V2G, beginning with it, then, bringing it to the attention of the larger stakeholders? Because this certainly is a great concept, but as you've said, that the involvement of so many stakeholders also makes it a coordinating nightmare in some sorts.
Yeah. So, great question, Rishi. I think the last 5 years have been so we have been building Sheru for 5 years now, and it's been a tremendous journey. I think, of course, since we were doing this for the first time in India, we had to jump through many hoops and over long stretches. So the initial trials went on for years. Then the commercial trial was done for a complete year. Then the usage by the customer took another 2 quarters to stabilize. And thereafter, we could really materialize how much impact the technology was able to create for the end beneficiary. So I think there's a lot of work that goes into breathing life into something like this in the initial years of the company for obvious reasons. But I've been in the deep tech ecosystem for 10 years now. Prior to building Sheru, I was part of Grey Orange Robotics, which is also a deep tech company, India's first deep tech unicorn rather. And there were, in the early years of the company, in the first 4 or 5 years of the company, there were a lot of trials, tests, changes, evolution. A lot of things happened in the initial years of the company. But once the technology gets created, once its outcome is fairly understood and benchmarked, then it's like adding a new element to the periodic table. You are basically, we are able to impact the P&L of very large enterprises very directly and in a very big way. So I think we are going to see the next 5 years for Sheru is going to be a big growth journey. We have already proven a lot of things on ground in India, considering Indian nuances as well, which would allow us to scale in a sustainable way in India. That's one. I think from a global point of view, first of all, I would like to highlight one more thing out here. We are not only India's first vehicle to grid company, we are also world's first cloud storage company. Right? So there is no company in the world which has innovated a cloud energy storage platform. So far, you must have heard about virtual power plants.
Yeah.
There are many companies that are working in that space.
Mhm.
But fundamentally, we realize that as a virtual power plant company, at a certain scale, they start facing friction from their own customers because both are dealing in the same commodity, which is electricity. Having said that, we realize that fundamentally we need to provide a flexible infrastructure which can act like a uh, somewhat like cloud computing for grid operators, and thereby we built the entire technology stack of these distributed energy resources as a cloud energy storage platform. So this is for the first time happening from India for the world, uh, and that allowed us to bring in our unique perspective uh, onto a lot of tables in the global forums also.
Mhm.
And I think that has allowed and that has helped us drive the seriousness and urgency of this tech to be developed and adopted at scale in India as well. In India
One,
also, yeah,
sorry, I'm interrupting you. One supplementary question.
yeah,
Uh, you've narrated how 5 years of extreme hard work and coordination has gone into where you are now.
yeah,
During this process, how has opinions changed? I'm sure because we Indians, to a certain extent, are very reticent when a new technology or a new concept comes in,
yeah,
and half of our energies go in, denouncing that, or so that we don't adopt it, whether it is computers, whether it is, cloud or whatnot.
yeah.
So, in this 5 years, just wanted quickly, how has opinions changed? I'm sure when you first went around with this concept, though it
Yeah.
was also developing as you explained in your with your first job. Uh,
Yeah.
how has opinions moderated or changed?
I think, Rishi, I think when we look at the last 5 years, these 5 years were also very different for any other 5 years,
Okay.
right? There was COVID for for
Yeah.
2
Yes.
years, right? So for
Mhm.
2 3 years, there was a different life that all of us were living, right? And generally, when you look at a 5 year plan of a company, nobody has that kind of a 3 years or 60%, 70% of the time going towards this thing, this kind of a thing. So I think uh, there were a lot of ups and downs due to various reasons in the opinions around this. For example, in 2019, I remember 19 to 20,
Okay.
pre-COVID, for the first year, it
Mhm.
was considered very much far ahead. It was considered way ahead of its time and may not be even needed as an urgency. It was the time of uh, when uh, sustainability was not really a focus area for anyone in the country, right? I think to a large extent, sustainability has come into a lot of limelight after COVID, wherein we went through what we went through. And we realized as a society that sustainability at a very fundamental level is missing. Uh, and that led to the entire discussion around climate, that led to the entire discussion around health, revisiting our public utilities, everything. So suddenly, within from 2020 to 2021, there was a lot of curiosity to
Mhm.
understand things. I think to a certain extent, we were able to leverage that time well enough
Mhm.
and tap onto that curiosity and bring this into again focus of the entire discussion. So I think that helped us. And with EV gaining traction, what has happened is that, and EV went through a lot of transition. You remember EV started out with massive incentives. Today,
True.
there are really no incentives.
True.
So, and despite that, we are at a figure of around 5% EV adoption in the transport of country. So we have made dramatic changes in a very short span of time. Within 2 years, we have gone through supply chain crunch to removal of subsidies to a lot of things. So suddenly now the sustainability of EV ecosystem requires more to be delivered out of EVs and not just an emission impact. And that's where the discussion around considering EVs as personal energy devices, just like considering a phone more than a phone, calling it a smartphone, making literally a part of your livelihood, that came into that discussion, right? So something similar happened with EVs also, the moment subsidies evaporated in India as well. And for that
So
matter, globally everywhere. So,
fair enough.
yeah.
So where in all this the exercise, the endeavors that you took,
Yeah.
and as you created your platform NetBat,
Yeah.
where is it where is NetBat right now, and where do you want to chart it? um, I think a decade will be a long time, but 5 years, since the developments are coming in a real more fast than we would have seen earlier before 2020.
Yeah.
Where is NetBat right now? What are the industry talking about it?
So
And
we are, yeah.
and where does it go in the next 5 years?
So currently we are live at a very small scale in Delhi with
Okay.
the grid operators in Delhi.
Okay.
Delhi has been conducive. All the grid operators were private, so
Mhm.
a lot of risk bandwidth was there. So it's live today. We are serving the grid in Delhi right now. The
Mhm.
idea is to get to a scale where we are able to service Delhi in a significant way in the next 2 years.
Mhm.
And the idea again is to get to at least a 1 to 1.5 gigawatt hour aggregated capacity of the platform in the
Mhm.
next 5 years in India. Having said that, India's requirement of energy storage is huge. It's India's the
So
third
300.
largest. Yeah. I mean, the amount of storage capacity in our early estimates, and the estimates have been evolving, has been
Mhm.
from 200 to 260 gigawatt hour
Mhm.
required for the electrification targets by 2030, which is 60% renewables, 30% EV. Right? So for all those targets to go well, 200 to 260, like 260 gigawatt hour storage capacity will be needed. So 1 gigawatt hour, 1.5 gigawatt hour will be still a very small
True.
figure. But the idea is to at least get to a scale where then we can have the discussion of scale up in a different manner, right? We, instead of talking about it uh, uh, at a company to company level, we are able to integrate ecosystem to ecosystem and grow not in multiples of megawatt hours, but in gigawatt hours from there on. So I think scale up requires different strategies in different phases, given it's a new element add,
Mhm.
plus it's a underserved market. And not only any underserved market, but a critical underserved market. So uh, I feel we'll have to go through different strategies as the company evolves. But that's broadly where we see
So
the.
quickly, two last questions, Ankit. One is, if you could, break up for our listeners, your collaboration with BSES, the discoms in Delhi. How
Yeah.
has the experience been? You began with it. I'm sure there might have been some coordination issues or some logistics issues, and then you would have charged it. And then, as time passed, the results would have come in, which would have further, bolstered your confidence to move further. If in short you could share your experience on the Delhi Discom part with our listeners.
So I think Rishi, I think it was a very surprising experience. First of
Hmm.
all, we went. Everyone has an impression about discoms in their head. That discoms are these
True,
very
I agree.
slow. So the first image that comes to anyone's head is actually that. But uh, as engineers, we empathize with people who work with very large systems at scale, and who have to manage those systems at scale with limited cash flow, and that too in a way where they have to do massive steer up now from their non-digital way, which was not only non-digital but also coal-based energy system to a renewable-based energy system. So there is an immense pressure built on
True.
discoms right now. We can't really comprehend uh, how much pressure there is. I mean, if we go into this, what the energy system of India goes through every day, you would be tremendously surprised about the heroic. Suddenly all the effort that all the professionals who are in the energy industry go through every day to keep the lights on. it will suddenly look very, very heroic, right? So I think before we went to them, we first of all understood this, engaged with them for a quarter. I think for a good quarter, we just engaged with them and first understood the customer well enough. Who are we dealing with, and what is their pain, and where is that pain coming from? Thereon, it was, I think, more of a process for us. We did not look at it from a time delay point of view. We looked at it from the point of view of that this is, of course, happening for the first time. There is going to be steps to it. A quarter would go into technical trials, then a quarter would go into integration trials. And why a quarter? Because for a month it needs to be planned, for a month it needs to be executed, for a month it needs to be reconciled. Right. So from a process point of view, things move very fast once we understood the customer well enough, when we understood the pain of the grid operators well enough. Mm-hmm. So however, it took 1 year. I mean, after that first quarter also for things to go live, but that's the nature of the problem. Not really, I wouldn't call it slow if in hindsight. I would rather call things slow in future if after seeing the adoption, if after seeing the outcome, things don't move fast enough.
No, that's a fair assessment. The last question that I want to put to you, V2G is, I feel it's a very promising concept if it's used in India, because the kind of resources we have and we will have in the future, this becomes important. But, what does the future hold for it? Is it still that the larger industry is still in a wait and watch mode, or we will have to have more use cases of V2G first, so that the larger ecosystem, gets to understand the usability of this concept? What does the future hold?
So Rishi, I feel that future is going to be a combination of our execution and of course what people think about it as the market timing. So I think I can speak for our execution. I think from our execution strategy point of view, our thought process is very straightforward.
Sorry, I'll just interrupt you and I'll give you a context why I'm asking this question. Yeah. Right now, India is in the middle of establishing smart meters for power. Yeah. Now, smart meters are the smallest building block, but the most important building block, because if you want to sell energy from China to Europe, you need a smart meter. Yeah. Anything you need to do, you need a smart meter. Right. I recently met with almost all the smart meter people who are doing it. And one problem that they face is, again, discoms, because the systems there need to be upgraded, without which smart meters won't work. For example, the billing system is the biggest problem right now. So, there are teething issues, which, and without those billing systems, because almost 17 discoms right now are not in a condition to, completely upgrade their billing systems. Yeah. Because of financial costs, coordination issues. Yeah. So, in the future, that's why I was asking. V2G also faces the same fate, because you need a lot of technological upgradation in systems, and that would require finances. So while a technology could be great, there could be those shortcomings. Hence, that's the context I was asking.
Yeah, no, this is really helpful, Rishi. So I'll just add to it. So I think if you look into the subsidy data, the electricity subsidy that discoms are to receive for the direct tariff subsidies that they are mandated. Yeah. We know that 50% of the India's electricity consumption is paying the premium, which is CNI. Yeah. And 50% that is agriculture and domestic, that is all subsidized, almost all subsidized. All that subsidization in direct tariff is mandated by governments, and that money flows through the central government to state government, and state government to the discoms. Similarly, from state government also some obligations are to be paid. The average delay in this subsidy payment to discoms is around 12 months.
Yeah, sometimes more than that.
More than that. Yeah. Imagine if some discom has to make the payments for upgrade, for any kind of payments, right? The kind of working capital stress they might be having. So the problem now, it's a very unique problem. We can't really change this problem overnight.
Yeah.
But this is the base reason due to which all these teething issues come in or process delays happen. Now, while I'm working with Sheru, I'm working on Sheru, I'm also working with the Beacon team. So you might have heard of the Beacon Foundation, which is behind UPI, ONDC.
I do. Yes.
So basically, Beacon Foundation is building another protocol called UEI, United Energy Interface.
Okay.
And I'm working closely with the senior stakeholders of Beacon Foundation to really navigate UEI in the right direction from my limited experience, right? So UEI's objective is to actually deliver those market mechanisms to the overall energy ecosystem, including the large incumbents, including people like DISCOMs, including people like regulatory commissions, including everyone, to first of all bring in digitization in the day-to-day processes.
Okay.
Bridge financial payment system gaps, so that the market first of all can move and adopt the benefit of digital itself. I think electricity system is still in a digital transition to digital phase.
Fair enough. Yes.
Which, a lot of the hardware that has to come on the last mile for such technologies like V2G has to come, that gets slowed down. So I think those things will, of course, are being worked upon. That's a clear focus area for a lot of senior stakeholders in the government also. So they are also part of this initiative in UEI, due to which first the base level ecosystem is being created. It's being worked upon. So I think that's one. Second, Ministry of Power, if you look at the reforms that they're doing at the pace at which they're doing, is immense in the last 2 years. I mean, it's just crazy. Every month or two or every 3 months, you get a notification which is very drastic. Time of the day tariffs are supposed to come in by 2024, right?
Yes.
2024. Now that can't happen with smart meters not in place. But the moment it comes in, smart meters will have to be executed. So the pressure is being mounted on execution from the decision makers also in the governance in a very right way. So I think that is also in place. The third part is now, like for example, this smart meter issue, right? One really ground level reality that I have got to know is that there are a lot of smart meter vendors in India who can supply these meters to DISCOMs, right? But not every meter is integration tested with DISCOMs. There is no single window to which you can do the integration testing and then you get compliant with all the DISCOMs.
That's a great overview. That's a great point you actually made. And I recently 2 of the vendors raised this issue about integration here.
Yeah. So it's a very simple administrative issue which can be solved by creating a single integration window and housing and keeping some body like CEA the home for it. And suddenly the supply will open from hundreds of vendors. So whatever was a slow execution will compound. It will create a business opportunity also rather. So I think there is a need to first of all look at all these issues from a systemic point of view and solve them in a very systemic way itself. And I am very happy that all the senior stakeholders and decision makers are taking it very seriously. They're working towards it. And in the next 5 years, I am an optimist. And with that optimism only, I'm building Sheru. But I am very optimistic that all those market mechanisms will deliver.
I mean, as one of the government officials said, when you're working in the fastest emerging market in the world, you have to be optimistic or things don't work out. But on that note, thank you so much, Ankit, for being so forthright and giving us the best insights into V2G. Thank you for your time and all the best with your endeavors. And we hope, and at least we hope to see V2G, coming at least on a major scale.
Thank you, Rishi. Thank you for the conviction.